It's more common in the scenes of movies. This film, recently entered in the 48 Hours Film Festival, was about a dancing exorcist. But parodies aside, some believe this is a very real issue facing mankind. The Bible tells us that Jesus himself cast out demons on a regular basis, and it's this example that leads many Christians to believe that spiritual practices such as exorcism are an integral part of their faith. One of the most notable cases of exorcism was by the Catholic Church, as depicted in the film The Exorcism of Emily Rose, based on the true story of Annalise Michel. Bob Larson, dubbed the real exorcist, has made his name in the media as the new face of spiritual warfare, being seen to cast out demons on TV each night in the US. A few years ago, Larson appeared as a guest on the Australian comedy show John Saffron vs. God, where he seemed to be casting out demons from the host himself. Saffron, interestingly, has remained silent on the experience ever since.
I think where the thing becomes fantasised is in terms of the practice of that and what sometimes goes on, and so a film was always going to elaborate on it and make something a lot more dramatic than it really was.
Reverend Mark Beale has experienced his fair share of exorcisms. He says there are strict guidelines that have to be met before he can perform an exorcism, especially in the case like that of Janet Moses, who was exorcised by family members using unusual techniques like pouring water into her eyes for hours on end.
In the Anglican Church, to do a full-blown exorcism, you have to have the permission of the bishop, and the person has to be examined by a psychiatrist before that process has actually gone into. In England, there are some clergy who have the title of exorcist.
And according to Reverend Beale, there are clear signs that someone is possessed.
Probably the biggest sign of an evil spirit and a demon would be when a person is unable to receive the Spirit of Christ, the Holy Spirit. You know, sometimes when I've been involved with other clergy, and we've run what we called in the Anglican Church Life in the Spirit seminars, and on one of the nights in the Life of Spirit seminars you have a special evening, it's very similar to Alpha, where you pray for people to be filled with the Holy Spirit. And sometimes there can be a real blockage there.
The word possession, I very rarely use it. I'd rather say a person has a spirit, because I repeat, if they are possessed, that really means the ownership. They've submitted themselves totally to the ownership of a spirit in some way.
Bill Sabritsky is widely known throughout New Zealand, a lawyer and businessman turned faith healer. Bill's conversion was widely publicised in the media. Bill started Dove Ministries with his wife Pat and began evangelising to New Zealanders. He quickly discovered the gift of healing through Jesus and the gift of freeing people from demonic spirits.
I think we'd been going for about 3 months, and this reporter arrived and sat through the meeting. And after the meeting, I took him just to the adjacent room for an interview, or he took me there, so to speak. And in the course of that, I realised that the Lord was speaking about encouraging him to be born again. So I suggested to him that as he had been in the meeting, would he like to have that experience? And he accepted it. Now, as we began to pray for him, he fell on the floor in the room and began to wriggle like a snake. Now, I had never seen anything like this in my life before. I was a new Christian, but the man with me, Doug Maskell, was experienced, and he said, "That's a demon." And we began to pray, and voices began to talk out of this reporter and scream, and eventually, with the authority of Jesus Christ, Doug exorcised, in other words, commanded the demon to go, and it left.
Bill says the Bible is very clear on the practice of exorcism. He believes it's in the name it's practiced in that makes the difference.
The first thing we have to do, the Bible tells us in James chapter 5, verses 13 through 18, is anyone sick or got a problem of this nature? Well, go to your pastor and elders. Now, if they're not experienced in it and they are concerned about it, they can look around. There are people who are involved in this ministry. We've got to do it in the authority that's in Jesus Christ.
He believes that most afflictions are caused by demonic spirits and can be exorcised, but like Reverend Beale, believes it's a holistic process.
We are healed, I believe, spirit, soul and body in that order. And therefore, if our spirit is right with God, our soulish area, which includes our emotions and our will get healed in our body, because we are open to the power of God.
There's spiritual illness, physical illness and psychological illness, and sometimes it can be a combination of all those three, and all three need to be treated. And so a person needs sometimes the medication, They need the counsellor to help them change their perception of life. And they also need the spiritual input that gives them the hope and the filling of God's Spirit.
In the Janet Moses court case, the family's defence said they acted out of love and honestly believed she was demon-possessed. There was no deliberate attempt to cause the death of their niece, but like many cases of exorcism gone wrong, it came down to practice.
I can remember very early in my Christian walk, I was 19 when I came into faith. I used to go to these home meetings. I was a university student at the time. I had a really inquiring mind. I was desperate to know everything about Christianity I could possibly know. And then at one of these meetings, they tried to cast a demon of inquiry out of me. Well, that was absurd. And so I think people can get carried away and interpret everything in terms of demons and evil spirits.
Demons exist, whether you believe in them or not.
The media has built a reflection of exorcism which is distorted and exaggerated. The truth is that it's an area that can't be dismissed as fiction and should still be treated with caution.